Welcome to our demo monthly talking stick session for December. Thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday and for being flexible when we needed to change the date for this session. We're going to go ahead and kick off with a quick disclaimer.
This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred.
All right, so today we're going to be doing a little bit more of that getting to know you like we did in the November session, a little bit of time to get to know one another and kind of kick off our sessions that way. Then we are going to get a little bit more information about you and your programs and what's going on in them. We're going to do a little bit of brainstorming, talk about budget revisions, everybody's very favorite topic, but I know one that is on lots of minds. And then also cover a little bit about our holiday schedules for the department and for TA and those upcoming events that are hopefully on your calendar. As we go throughout today, if you have any questions, feel free to pop those over in the chat box. We'll get to them as we're going throughout the different topics, as well as we'll have some dedicated time at the end for questions, particularly if you have maybe questions that we don't cover through any of these topics today. We've set aside a dedicated little chunk of time for any questions that you might have. So if you're looking for the chat box, if you look in the menu at the bottom, you should see a little talk bubble that will say chat. And when you click on that, it opens up the chat box and you can type right in there and we'll all be able to see your message. Now today, Bianca, the program officer for demo and specifically for the ACE programs, is going to be joining us in just a little bit. There was a little bit of an overlap of meetings. So I will be leading us through. I've met many of you on our previous sessions, but I'm Sarah Brightwell and part of the OIE Technical Assistance team that'll be working with you throughout the year on your projects and programs. So just a quick reminder as we kick off that for our talking sticks, this is all of the demo grantees. So that means that it's both the NYCP grantees and the newly awarded ACE grantees from all across the US, as you can see on our map here. So we do have kind of a wide array of programs, but I think it's also helpful as we're maybe discussing sometimes the different things that we're doing or different requirements to understand that we do have both the NYCP and the ACE grantees represented on this call. So for our icebreaker today, we are going to play a little game, this or that. There are no right or wrong answers. This is entirely your opinion. And it is your first opportunity in our talking stick sessions for you to be able to draw all over the presentation screen. So we are going to use what is called the annotation feature in Zoom. If you haven't done this before, it is kind of fun, typically something that people enjoy. So if you look to where it says that you are viewing Sarah Brightwell's screen, then you should see annotate there, or sometimes you have to go under more and then it'll show you annotate. And the annotate icon is a little pencil. So it should be right by where it says that you're viewing my screen, where you'll see the annotate, or go under more and then annotate. When you click on it, it brings up a whole new little toolbar. Now, you can use any of these features that you want to mark your answer, but I'm going to suggest the easiest one is if you click on stamp, you can pick an emblem. So use whichever one you want. You can use the arrow, the check, the heart, the star, the X, the question mark. I'm going to pick the heart. And once I select that, then if I click on the screen, oh, I don't know if it's going to there we go. I was like, sometimes it wants to change it since I'm in presentation, but you can see I can put my heart, and notice you can put your emblems on here wherever. So this is how you're going to vote. I'm going to put up two things on the screen, and you're going to stamp your little emblem or icon onto the one that you select. So, and it's going to be whichever one you prefer. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen. So don't worry when your voting goes away. And we're going to go to our first one. Our first one is super easy. Are you more of a summer person or a winter person? So we're going low stress for our first topic so you can practice out your voting. So let's see. We've got a good mix, but I feel like we're leaning more summertime here. That may be because most of us are experiencing wintertime right now and would like a little touch of summer. I see you're definitely getting the hang of the voting. All right. And if you're having any trouble doing this, you can always go over to the chat box. I can see we've definitely got our Louisiana group voting with the this and that. So yeah, you can always pop your vote over in the chat box if you're having trouble actually stamping. So, all right. I'm going to say this one's almost 50-50, but it's maybe 55 summer, 45 winter. So we know we like a little bit of everything. So let's try our next one. For our next vote, this or that, Akatak or Wajape. If you're not familiar with these two, you may be torn on what to vote for. So the Akatak is commonly referred to as Eskimo ice cream, and it's berries and typically like caribou fat, and you mix it together into a dessert. Wajape is a berry, probably going to do a terrible job explaining both of these. Berry sauce, typically made out of like choke cherries. I can tell you, I'm going to put my heart over on Wajape because it's my favorite. I'm surprised we don't have any very strong views on one or the other in the chat box. It looks like I'm weighing our voting here. They're both pretty yummy, but I think Wajape is winning. All right. We're going to go, and we have one who's clearly torn. I like the check mark in the exact center, someone who just cannot pick between our favorite options. All right, let's clear this one off and we'll see. For our next option, are you more of an M&M or a Reese's Pieces? Apparently some strong opinions because the voting happened very quickly. Let's see. I think it's a little more on the M&M side, although I must say I personally am a Reese's Pieces kind of gal. But no wrong choices. All good options. All right, I think you're getting the hang of the voting. You're going to be an annotation pro. So if you do this in your own Zooms, always make sure to clear in between, because I'll show you what happens if I don't. Our votes then stay on the next screen, which is super confusing. So I'm going to clear all our drawings so we can have fresh voting. Now, are you more hoop dance or jingle dance? Oh, see, y'all are getting very good at the voting here. And it looks like, I mean, jingle seems to be winning by a landslide. So if you're a hoop dance person, you may have to get your vote in because jingle is winning. All right. That was a quick vote. All right. Final one. So I'm going to clear those. And our final one, are you the early bird or the night owl? Are you up before the sun or up greeting the moon? Got a pretty good mix. We also have a lot who really think you're neither one. You're high noon kind of people. I'm more of the night owl. I'm gonna have to put my swing vote over to the owls. But it looks like we have a lot. And it's interesting that so many of our early birds have also selected the star icon. I don't know what that means, but it seems to be a thing. All right. So now, we can go through and I know who's going to be emailing things at, 5 a.m. as they drink their second cup of coffee in the morning, and who's going to be drinking their second cup of coffee at, midnight. Either one. Great. All right. So, and I love both because I just don't sleep. So you get to use all 24 hours. Nothing's off limits. Perfect. All right, I'm going to clear that one off. I appreciate you partaking in our game. Hopefully everybody feels a little more loosened up and ready for conversation and activities as we go through our talking stick today. Because we are going to be doing quite a few things where we'd love to get your opinion and your feedback. So the first one here, as we kind of move into thinking about your particular programs and projects, is that we're going to pull up a little poll. We'd love to know what is happening in your program, what's going on. So as we think about that, I'm going to pull up a little poll just asking you right now, how are you currently offering your program? Are you completely in person, completely virtual? Are you hybrid where you're able to do some in person, some virtual? Or I know some of you are still in a planning period, so you might not currently be offering services, but maybe if you were, you'd be virtual, or if you were, you'd be in person or hybrid, or it's perfectly fine to say, not only are we in a planning, so we're not currently offering services, but I don't know exactly how we'd be doing it. That's fine too. But we just love to get a little bit of information on that piece. So I'm going to give you a second just to get your vote in there. All right. Looks like 40% of us are virtual. And then we've got about a quarter of us that are hybrid. So we're doing a little bit of everything. And then even within kind of our planning group, you can see about a quarter are not currently offering services, but if we would be, we'd be hybrid. So it definitely looks like we're either virtual or hybrid as our primary responses there. I'll go ahead and post so you can see what your fellow demo programs are up to. And then I believe that Bianca has now joined, so I'm going to let her say hello to everybody before we go into our next topic.
Thank you, Sarah. Hey, everyone. Yeah, I know a lot of you guys are waiting to hear back from either Donna or I for your budget revisions. We are getting to them. It has been extremely busy since for the last month or so. Today we're in all-day trainings as other days for the past couple of weeks. And I also been out for some time. And I also will be out for a lot of December. So one of the most important things I do want to vocalize is that you do not need to wait for approval from us to move forward with your project. We will be getting to those. It is taking, a little bit longer than we expected, but they are coming. We know it's important to get feedback, but it will, definitely be on its way. And yeah, we have, another employee starting with us soon. We just had one employee get affiliated a little bit, but she will be taking on grants as well. So, we'll definitely have some more support moving forward. But yeah, it's just, of course, been super busy. And we are, doing as much as we can when we can do it, but it has been hard when we're in meetings all day and required trainings, and it's a lot of changes that's going on at the department. So we are, doing as much as we can. So again, I apologize for the wait. They will be coming. Again, it's just to kind of, if you are a continuing grantee, to make sure carryover is being spent. If you're a new grantee, just making sure that your items are in the right budget category. So, we might have some more questions for you. Some of the budgets are super complex, so sometimes we need to get more information from our program attorneys. So we're forwarding to them too. So just know that we're working on it. But please don't, wait for an answer from Donna or I to, get started on your projects. And of course, if you have any questions, Sarah and the Synergy team are here for you. And, please, keep sending your emails. They will get answered eventually. It's just, a lot going on right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Bianca. All right, so you have now gotten to annotate on the screen. You've gotten to take a poll. So it must be time for a chat box. So what we would like to know, we've already talked a bit about, most of you are virtual or hybrid right now, but what's been going on in your project? And this is something that we're going to continue each month as we do the talking sticks. So as you think about you've really had about your first 2.5 months of the grant year. What are the big things that have been going on in your program? Is there any type of exciting activities that you've been able to implement in this very different type of programming? Share that with us over in the chat box. We would love to know. Like I said, we're going to keep doing this during the talking sticks as we move forward. It's a great way to be able to share ideas between programs. And then also, for us to be able to see, are there things that maybe we want to explore more? We might want to have you share even more next time about the neat things going on in your various projects and programs. So I would ask, join us over in the chat box and share with us what's going on in your project. How have these first 2.5 months been? What has been going on? What have you been able to do with your students and with your communities? So while you're doing that, I am going to also pop up a link so that if you don't have something you feel comfortable sharing right now, you can go ahead and click that link. And for those who are typing their great shares, you can grab that link when you're done. And I'll pop it in again in a minute, but that'll be our next thing is that we're going to be checking out that link. So you can see we've already got a couple of good shares. Dr. Johnson sharing, as it rolled away, that they were in the school systems, but have recently gone virtual. So really working on ramping up that virtual piece. And I know that's where many of us are, either currently virtual or at least partially. And Sonia sharing about a staff member that's made a Bitmoji cultural class. That sounds very cool. We'd love to get a peek into their Bitmoji classroom. I know I've seen a couple of teachers who've done some really neat things with their virtual classrooms. And let's see, Roxanne sharing, they're doing a MAPS media project. So they began by making podcasts and then transitioning into digital photography. And eventually we'll get into actually developing a video. So that sounds very cool. So they're hybrid because they have, some who are in school and some who've opted to stay virtual. But sounds like a really neat technology project. And then we've got Mark, who's got their first quarterly meeting coming up, bringing together everybody, parents, elders, speakers, cultural bearers, students. Very nice. So you're going to have a busy week. And John is doing some virtual cooking lessons and painting. Dancing with the Avatar STEM workshop. I've got to say, that's a new one. John, you're going to have to tell us a little bit more about Dancing with the Avatar STEM. I'm curious what that is. And then Ivan, this was their first time doing their workforce development camp virtually. Yeah, I think lots of you have gotten this opportunity to try things virtually you never thought you would be doing virtually. And Allison sharing, they partnered with the California State Parks and created a new program called Kindling the Flame. So a youth cultural revitalization program for middle school. It was hosted weekly at Sumeg Village, a traditional village located on state parkland within Yurok territory for 5 weeks, 3 hours at a time. And students learned about the village and life in the village, created models of the village buildings, learning about how they were constructed with traditional tools. Very cool. A virtual college and career night coming up. Community parade with Molly of Denali and staff wearing regalia. Very nice. And I see a couple of things in here about staffing. So yes, I know some of you are thinking, I haven't gotten to the part where I get to do stuff with students yet. But yes, it is big and important that you've been able to start staffing your programs. We've got a Fab Lab. Developing a charter school. Sounds like you're almost there, Juanita. That's exciting. Nathan's been working on some teacher training resources and resource guides. Very nice. Michael got a program director. I know that's always exciting. And then a Superman virtual presentation for students and families. And then lots of virtual tutoring. Definitely a big need. Let's see. And Ferdinand was sharing the Nevada Department of Education's Amplified Nevada Native Youth was founded in response to the pandemic and subsequent shift to virtual. And looks like they're doing lots of things, providing a roadmap to support virtual learning platforms, resource hubs. And she even provided you with a link to a YouTube where you can learn more. If you're thinking this is a lot of information, how am I supposed to keep up with it in the chat box? We can collect this information and share it with you as well. Looks like Nancy's sharing some other camps that they've been able to do virtually and teacher training, some in-person tutoring, using Schoology, some virtual college tours, and career and college panels. Yeah. And to some extent, sometimes this has actually been an opportunity to be able to get some people to participate or speak that normally might not be available, but that because of the different situations right now are available, or at least available to beam into your virtual programs. Very nice. If you're still typing, go right ahead. But I do want to make sure we get through all of our pieces. So we'll kind of loop back here and look at the other things that people are sharing, because I do want to, again, bring us to our brainstorming. So a few of you partook in the brainstorming opportunities after the November session, but as we discussed with Bianca and Donna, we wanted to make sure that everybody really got an opportunity to take part in the brainstorming and that everybody knew how to work the Padlet to be able to take part in the brainstorming. So I've popped that link over in the chat box again, and I'm going to invite you to click on the link and open it in another window on your computer. You can do this in another window if it's easier for you to do it on another device, whatever is most comfortable for you. And I'm actually going to switch what I'm sharing so that I'm going to be live in the Padlet with you. So let me switch over there. All right, so it probably doesn't look like my screen changed a ton because I already had a screenshot of the Padlet up. But you'll see when you go in live that you're able to actually type your comments directly in here the same way you would into our chat box in Zoom. So we have a couple of different brainstorm topics. The first being, so many of you are providing virtual programming right now, whether it's your full program or parts of your program. So what topics would be helpful in upcoming technical assistance webinars? What type of distance learning things? Are there particular tools that you want to learn how to work? Are there particular parts of your program that you haven't quite figured out how to offer virtually, so you'd like to figure out how you could continue those activities or programs in a virtual way? Are there particular challenges you're encountering that you'd like more ideas around? So just as you think about that, and that can be online distance learning, or it could be offline distance learning. You know, as you think about the students that you're trying to reach that maybe are not connected online and how you can interact with them. Anything within that distance learning realm, you can pop here and you can either hit add comment and type in your ideas there, or hit this plus sign right here and type in your ideas there. But any questions, any topic ideas, anything that you're thinking here? Then as we move over to our second category, this one is specifically for our ACE grantees. So if you're an NYCP, you can kind of ignore this column, but for our ACE grantees, what are the different types of service options that you're planning to offer to students? So you can make just a real general list. We're just looking to brainstorm ideas. This is something that multiple grantees have expressed interest in, that they'd love to know what their fellow grantees are thinking about offering, planning to offer. So you can pop your comment in there or hit the plus sign. And you can be doing this right now as we're actually talking. It's a live document. So if you click that link, and I'll pop it once more over in the chat box just to make sure everybody's got it here. You can click that link and start typing right now. The third column is really for everybody. There were a lot of questions around allowable incentives and what do other programs do for incentives if you do anything with them. So if you do some type of incentive with any of your students, what do you do? Okay, so do you have particular ideas that you've used in your program? Now, you'll notice I did pop in the little caveat that here that just because someone comments below doesn't necessarily guarantee it's allowable. So we will scroll through and look at the different ideas just in case there's some that are not technically allowable incentives and give you a heads up. But in general, what are some ideas that you have that have worked for you in your program? And you can see we're starting, if you put in your answer, it will start appearing just like this person's has. Then topics for upcoming talking stick sessions. So this is just if there are topics that you'd like us to cover in upcoming talking sticks, pop those ideas there. Again, you can do the comment or the plus sign, either one. And then the final one is if there are other questions or comments. So you can see this one has already been responded to. We do have a question about tracking enrollment management software. So we'll be addressing that, but it's a great place that if you have other questions, and particularly if you have other questions that might be of interest to your fellow programs. So you can pop those into those places. So go ahead, start popping in your ideas, your questions, your comments, and it'll start populating here on the Padlet. If you're having any trouble accessing the Padlet to be able to share your comments and ideas, please let me know, pop over in the chat box and let us know, and we can help you kind of troubleshoot that. And while you're typing, I do have a question over here, and I'm going to add to our questions here. and then we'll definitely address it today. There we go. All right. So we're going to give you just a couple of minutes to go ahead and keep populating. In particular, those first 4. We'll always take your other questions or comments, but in particular, we'd love to get your feedback on those first 4 topics. And John, it looks like you're saying that your screen is still stuck on the this or that. I say, let me see if me stopping the share and restarting will help kind of jolt your screen. All right. So John, if you could let me know over in the chat box, did that fix your screen or is it still stuck on this or that for you? Hopefully everybody is looking at the demo talking stick brainstorming Padlet, which looks like a little pin board. You can see we're getting lots of great ideas as far as what different grantees are doing for ACE service options. For distance learning, we've got folks who are looking into, how can you reach students in rural areas that don't have internet access? We can definitely cover that in some upcoming sessions. Ideas on engaging students who have Zoom burnout. I think we all have a certain level of Zoom burnout ourselves. So definitely something we can address. Some Zoom games, some virtual bingo. We have resources for that. So those are definitely all topics that we can address. Let's see, we'll check out our allowable incentives. You can see we gained some ideas there. I'm going to wait until we get kind of a number of ideas there, and we'll kind of address those as a whole. Lots of great ACE service options, which we're going to take those into a future session. And then for upcoming talking stick sessions, you see we're getting lots of great ideas there that we can use. Distance learning with a larger service area. All right. Okay. So keep going along. You'll also notice, and I've seen a few people have realized this, is very similar to most of the other social media platforms that you might interact with. There's this little heart. So if you think that's a great idea, you'd love to see that in an upcoming session, you can heart it. If you have that same topic that you'd like to see on distance learning, you can heart it. So you don't necessarily have to completely retype it if you have that same idea or share that want for a particular topic. You can just hit the little heart and it basically counts as kind of a vote for that particular topic. So it's a nice, easy way to provide some feedback that way too. Wonderful. All right, so keep sharing your ideas, but I do want to talk about some of these allowable incentives. So you'll see in general, certain student incentives can be allowable under the grant, but gift cards and money are never allowable. For incentives to be allowable, they must be clearly linked to goals and strategies described in your application. Additionally, they have to be nominal, meaning they have no cash value, And the uniform guidance prohibits the use of federal funds for entertainment, including amusement, diversion, and social activities, unless you've gotten prior written approval. So examples would be things like instructional supplies like pencils and books, certificates, trophies, or pizza parties, as long as they're clearly tied to the goals and strategies in your NYCP application. So when we're looking at what other folks have been doing, I want to talk about each of these, and then we can also talk about whether they are allowable, and we can have Bianca kind of chime in the department view on these as well. So can we use donated gift cards, et cetera, as incentive to complete surveys about service needs, et cetera? Not using federal funds for this, just things like gift cards donated by local businesses supporters. So this is a great example of a way to be able to provide incentives. When you get things donated and you're not using your federal funding for it, absolutely get those donated, get the gift cards donated, get maybe certificates for like a free pizza or free movie rental or whatever. Any of those things that are donated to your program, it's totally fine to use those as incentives because you're not using any of your federal funding for it. So that is a definite yes. Let's see. One of the issues that we ran into our first year was that we could not buy branded t-shirts from colleges. The program that we adopted, No Excuses University, called for overt marketing of colleges. So they ended up making t-shirts that said, "Ask me what college I'm going to attend," so that they weren't purchasing branded materials, but still had a motivation strategy. So basically they turn that into an activity. The kids are actually learning how to create t-shirts. That's an actual skill and an activity that you're providing. You're not just going out and purchasing t-shirts as a giveaway item. So that's definitely another way to go about that. Pay for field trip expense as a reward for achieving milestones as set forth in the grant. So a big thing to think about as you think about this one is that field trips can't just be for recreation. So if it's, okay, we've achieved this goal, these students have done this particular thing, so now we're going to go to an amusement park and have a good time, that's not going to be an allowable expense, okay? You have to think about field trips that already align with the scope and objectives of your approved grant application. So that might mean that if you're doing a big focus on college and career, then it might be that students have to attend a certain number of the college prep activities to get to go on the campus visit, in which case the campus visit serves as an incentive, but is not just for recreation purposes. It's meeting the goals and objectives of your grant. Okay. So really having to think about that. If you have particular field trips that you're not sure, those are things that you can always email in, and we're happy to give you some feedback on if you're not sure if it would be allowable or not. But in general, the field trips that you take have to be directly tied to the goals and objectives of your grant, not purely for recreation. All right. Could possible allowables be t-shirts, water bottles, etc., that help to build after-school programs or backpacks due to the need for more technology during the COVID pandemic? So let's look at two parts of that. T-shirts, water bottles, basically marketing materials for your program. Those are not going to be allowable incentives. If you are an ACE grantee and one of your services that you're going to provide is providing backpacks or school supplies, and a child can, on your menu of options, select that one of their services is going to be receiving a backpack with school supplies, that would be fine, because that's one of the service options that you're providing that students can pick. But just using it as an incentive, a giveaway of backpacks, would not be an allowable incentive. Let's see. We give the students t-shirts, water bottles, nylon bags, AP study cards, and received another grant from a different organization to buy incentives. So This was another one that has two pieces. If you're using a different funding source, you're only beholden to the rules and guidelines of that other funding source. So if that other tribal organization that gave you a grant said whatever your purchase is fine, that's between you and that funding agency. Totally fine. These incentive guidelines are for the federal funds that you've received through your demonstration grant. So as we think about things like t-shirts, water bottles, nylon bags, those are typically not allowable because they're just marketing the program as incentives. AP study cards, again, that sounds like something that was most likely aligned to the goals and objectives of your grant. So if students are taking part in an AP study group activity, or you're actually providing them with the AP course, then those study cards could be an allowable incentive because it would be tied to the goals and objectives. So again, that's the big key here, is whether it's going to be purely for recreation marketing or whether it's actually part of your grant project. We're very remote and have limited locations to purchase items for incentives. Can we purchase gift certificates to our local pizza cafe or coffee house? So you can't purchase those, but you can get them donated. So I'm going to go back to that first suggestion from this list. These are great items to get donated and use it as an incentive, but can't use those federal funds for that. I see that someone is making the great point of where you can find in the uniform guidance the information about field trips. So using a field trip as an incentive, but you're documenting how it's educational, not entertainment, and how it's tied to your grant goal and objectives. And their point is because independent auditors might ask questions, but also because it's just the appropriate use of your federal funds. So that's where you can go to actually read up specifically on that. Video rental store, again, you like buying gift certificates to the video rental store wouldn't be an allowable incentive, but those are great things to get donated. As you know, like a little gift certificate for one free rental, just not something you can actually purchase. Can we purchase internet and computers for students to participate if they are consumable? So I'm not sure why they would be as far as a computer would be consumable, because ideally, even if you're using a computer, then they would be returning it at the end of the school year or the program year. So as far as internet and computers, that's going to be very variable to your project. You're going to want to put together what your plan is there. So if it's a matter of you're providing that for students to be able to participate in your activities, that's potentially allowable. But it's really going to depend on if that's something that's going to be provided across the board, if there are other options for funding. So there are a lot more considerations with that particular one. So I'd suggest putting together specifically what you'd like to do and how, and send that in for consideration. All right, I think that is everything we had under our allowable incentives there. I do see over in our Zoom chat box, I see some folks talking about, using a museum. So absolutely. Students love a field trip. They're going to love even an educational field trip. So, using a museum or a special traditional place that ties in to the rest of your grant activities and to your goals and objectives is a great way to make those field trips something completely allowable. All right, I don't see anything else on incentives, but if any of those were unclear or you have other questions, feel free to pop those in either the chat box or the Padlet, as well as if you have any other great ideas. Now, the distance learning and the ACE service options, we're going to build into an upcoming one, but I do want to check over here if we have any other pieces. So for tracking and enrollment management software being used by other ACE grantees, and I see Tedna responded to this with what they're using. I will say what I have seen, and please feel free the rest of the programs to pop into our chat box what you might be using. But for the most part, for ACE grantees, I've seen that most are coming up with their own system. They're not necessarily going to be purchasing some pre-existing software program to use. Most are coming up with their own unique system to be able to track those types of things. So if you are potentially using some sort of pre-existing software, like I said, please let us know either in the chat box or the Padlet. As you can see, your fellow grantees, inquiring minds would like to know, but at least in reading through grant applications and talking with many of you, most of you seem to be developing your own systems internally. Then internet gift cards. Why are they not allowable? Kids need internet to interact virtually. So a couple of things on the internet gift cards. Gift cards would make it an incentive if you're just kind of giving that out in that way. So that wouldn't be necessarily an incentive that you could provide. However, like we were talking about with internet and computer type devices, it is potentially allowable, just depending upon how it's going to be used, how you're going to set that up. So again, I would put that information together, exactly what you'd like to do, and send that in for approval, because it is potentially allowable, but it's just going to depend on other factors. So you'll want to give a little bit more context to what you'd like to do with internet and your students. Let's see, I think that's all we had in the other questions here. This Padlet link is going to stay up. So it's going to be a continuing living, breathing document. So as you go off into the rest of your day and week, and you think of, oh, I have another question, or, oh, I have another distance learning topic I would love to see addressed, please come back here, pop those in, take the time to engage here. We're hoping to continue this throughout the various sessions and adding topics and things to keep it going as kind of an interactive discussion board. So I'm going to switch back to our other piece here. Again, don't worry if it doesn't look that different. It's just because my slide looks very much like the screen we were looking at before. All right, so Bianca had touched upon before, the budget revisions are currently under review. Some of you may have already been getting communication from Bianca and Donna in regards to the budget revisions that you've submitted. If you have not yet received communication, you will, but it just does take a while to review those, look through everything, particularly for those ACE budgets. As much time as it took you to put it together, it takes a good while to thoroughly review it as well. So they are both working through those diligently and will be reaching out to you. But as Bianca said, we really want to stress to you that you do not have to wait for that to be approved in order to start working on your project. You can continue expending according to your original budget until that new budget has been reviewed and approved. So don't let that hold you back. Continue working on your project and implementing. As we head into the holiday season, I know many of you will hopefully be taking a little time for rest, and so that will be happening over here as well. So there will be limited communication between December 18th to January 4th as folks at Ed take a little time and folks on the TA team take a little time. That does not mean that either group is going to disappear. It just means that you may see that responses take a little longer. So, whereas now sometimes you may be getting a response from like the TA email address within a few hours, because we'll have more folks out of office, it may take a day or two for a response. So just keeping in mind that if you have anything super pressing, that it would be great to go ahead and submit those questions this week for those super prompt answers. And everything will still be monitored during that time, but just it might be a scotch slower over that kind of 2-week period. And then as Bianca pointed out, she's going to be out of office starting December 10th, which is Thursday. That's why we moved up the talking stick. So if you have something in particular that needs Bianca's attention, you'll definitely want to reach out, ideally today or tomorrow, but ideally today, to give her time to actually run through those and start responding. So just a little reminder about that out of office time. Then we do have some events upcoming. So next Tuesday, we're going to have our first distance learning session. When we had our talking stick in November, one of the top topics that all of you said you were interested in, or you had team members that were interested in, were learning about the platforms, so different virtual learning platforms. So this is going to be a general overview of Zoom and Google Meets. It's going to be super helpful for anybody who's a beginner with either system, either platform, but also maybe if you're kind of an intermediate user, because not only will we go over the very basics, but we'll go over that intermediary piece of some of the engagement tools available in both products. So if you're thinking, I've seen y'all use breakout rooms, but I have no idea how I would do that myself, this session will show you that very thing. So you'll be joined by Olani and Tracy from the TA team to walk you very patiently through both platforms, show you the bells and whistles, and have you ready to use them in the new year. Then on December 17th, that is our December office hours. So I know many of you took part in office hours when we offered those in November. They were very popular. So we are doing office hours again in December. We're going to do it on the 17th. So it's right before that kind of time when a lot of people are going to be out of office. That's those informal sessions. So it's an hour long, it's come and go. So you can pop in at any point during that hour and ask any questions that you might have, whether it's a matter of a very official question or if you just need maybe some help brainstorming on a topic or trying to figure out a challenge. You're welcome to pop in during that hour session and ask any questions you might have about any of the OIE discretionary grants. So even if you have other discretionary grants from OIE, you can come to office hours and ask about those as well. I see a question about what time. So the distance learning one is at 2 Eastern. The office hours is at 1 Eastern. And then we have in January already scheduled on the schedule of TA Fun for you. Our next talking stick session for January is on January 14th at 3 Eastern. And then for our ACE grantees in particular, we're going to do a webinar on personnel and services. So in particular, really looking at two topics that you've expressed some interest in diving in a little deeper: how to use actual personnel staff versus external contract providers, and looking at the different service options like we were brainstorming and talking about today. So we're going to have a whole webinar on that on the 21st at 3 Eastern. So those are the 4 events that are already kind of on the calendar and that are upcoming for you to join, as well as any member of your team. In particular, you know, if you have other members of your team that one of these sessions is very applicable to, they are welcome to attend. These are all open sessions. I do see 2 questions here. One, is there a website for grantees that has the calendar of events as well as recordings? So the OESC website is being updated right now, which will then house the calendar of upcoming events. I will send an email out after today that'll have these for you, all the upcoming events in one spot, because the website is still being updated. The second piece, as far as the recordings, yes, we now do have clearance to put up the recordings of these TA sessions. So they are all being uploaded. They're almost all done, but most of the ones for demo are already up. And I'll include that link in the email that I'll send out after this to everybody who attended. But they're all available on YouTube to make it as easy as possible. That way you can watch it on literally whatever device you have available. And it's also in a playlist form. So if you're familiar with YouTube, you can hit subscribe, and every time a new recording goes up, it'll just send you a little notification and let you know that the newest recording is up. So I personally find that kind of helpful, and you may as well. And then I see the responses re allowable incentives in an email. So in the follow-up email, I'll include all of the links. So the link to the Padlet with all of that information, and I'll update some of our discussion there as well, so that everything's kind of in one spot for you. All right, so that is all of the upcoming event pieces. If you have any other questions, please go ahead and pop those in the chat box there, I'm going to, as you're putting in any final questions, launch our wrap-up poll. So it's our standard wrap-up poll. Was this event beneficial for you and or your program? And do you plan to share any of this information with your team? If you don't mind giving us a fast finger poll response. And then while you're doing that, you'll notice that other Sarah has popped over in the chat box our official feedback survey. If you've never tried out our feedback survey, hopefully some of you who do complete it can vouch. It's super short. It takes, I would say, approximately 3 minutes to complete. So please, if you'll take a few minutes to complete that, we would greatly appreciate it. See a question about when will G5 open up for year-end update reports? That is a great question. I do not have a specific answer for you just yet. So if I know, I believe, Nancy, that you're asking about for your final performance report. That is just not open just yet. As soon as we know that it is open, which will hopefully be soon, we will send out an email to all of you that are working on final performance reports. But it is not open just yet, and I don't have an exact date just yet, but we will definitely let you know as soon as that is open and available. That is just for those of you who are doing a final performance report. For everybody else, you can ignore. You will not be dealing with G5 reporting until later in the spring. Nancy, there was a webinar actually last week. I'm going to write down your name and I will reach out to you via email after this with that information. All right. Looks like most everybody has been able to respond to the poll, so I appreciate that. Don't forget to also do your feedback survey. And then our normal wrap up, just in case you don't have the contact information that you need, here is the contact information for both of your program officers, both Bianca and Donna, as well as for the TA team. So you can always reach out to the TA team at oie@seiservices.com. Whether you're reaching out to the TA team or to the ed staff, we do ask that you include your grantee name and PR number when you're emailing. It just makes it a little bit easier to make sure that we're providing you with the appropriate guidance. And Jennifer, yes, I will send that to you as well.
Hey, see another question come in about the budget modifications, and I just wanted to reiterate that we are working on those. I would expect to get a couple more done before I take leave before Thursday, but the last week of December, I'll work on some of them as well too, as I'll be back on a couple hours out of each day. But you might not receive them for a little while just because I'll be on leave and Donna is super busy. Although they are coming and you do not need to wait for approval from Donna or I to either get started or continue your work on your grant. I do again apologize for the delay. We've been called into several meetings or all-day trainings, and it's just been very busy since the budget revisions were due, but we are working on them. We have not forgot about them. Like Sarah said, they are complex, so a lot of times I still have questions that I have to get answers back from the program attorney on some things. Generally, the biggest thing that I'm seeing is a lot of personnel included under direct services. And if you are including that under direct services, we probably need more explanation just because we do, if it's ACE, we do know that direct services should be selected by the student. So we probably need more information or some changes to make sure that it's fitting in the scope of ACE. And then, you know, as far as NYCP, we're just making sure that you are including any carryover from previous years, or if you received a budget reduction from this last, for this last award, that you are making those changes. So everyone, you know, is awarded as federal stewards. So you guys, have the ability to spend accordingly to your applications. It's just making sure that we're all on the same page for this budget revision. So this should not hold up any activities that you do have planned.
Thank you, Bianca. And there was one other kind of clarification. They were asking if, as part of their budget revision, they asked to implement new virtual activities that weren't originally included in their budget prior to the budget revision, should they wait on those new activities and just continue with their old, or can they go ahead and start the new ones as well?
I think that as long as that they're clearly tied to your project and your scope. So let's say you have a science scope and sorry, my 3-year-old. If you have a approach to science and you find that virtually and that's all in your application, definitely please make sure it's fitting that scope. But then what you cannot do is just, oh, we found a really cool art virtual class, and in your application you said nothing about art. You cannot do something that you do not reference in your application or will not meet your goals. So just make sure that if you are revising it, then you take out the closet. Okay, baby. So just make sure that it's fitting to your scope. If you need to run that by me before I leave on Thursday, please send another email. I am putting in a couple hours overtime just to, if there's any emergencies I need to handle before I leave, I can do that. So yeah, just, make sure it's fitting your scope, and we should be okay. If you have huge concerns about it, please run it past Donna or myself before moving forward.
Perfect. All right. I think that is all the questions from the chat box, and we are just a couple of minutes over. So we will be sending all of that follow-up information this afternoon via email. And then if you have additional questions, you're welcome to either pop them in the chat box, pop them on the Padlet, or reach out via email after this, and we'll be sure and get you answers. But we thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you soon virtually.